What's up, Battletech fans? It's a new year, and you know that means lots of new stompy robot goodness on the horizon. Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, there's never been a better time to be a Battletech player than today, and I can say that with the experience of having played for almost 30 years. Now, with so much to look forward to, what better way to celebrate the future of the game than by taking a look at the past? These days, the buzz is all about new box sets, new miniatures, and the shape the game will be taking as we move forward in the Ill Clan era post-Hour of the Wolf. And rightly so. There's a lot of new developments on the horizon, and a large chunk of these are going to feature visual elements that can trace their inspirations directly back to the classic retrofuturism found in the mecha sci-fi of the 1980s. Don't worry, I'll do something with robot jocks at some point.
I'll see you in hell.
You see, I like to use my minis, and I don't know how many times out on the road I've come across a player who's never even laid eyes on an old school mini, much less know that they come from the ranks of... The history behind what went on there is a whole other subject, but with all that locked away and buried, I feel like there's a lot of Battletech's fundamental history that gets locked away with it. I've had conversations with friends and colleagues in the past about Battletech needing its own identity and needing to sever the ties it has with what came before, but without those, we wouldn't be where we're at today, and I think that's worth exploring. Roddy Piper said it best.
You want to bury these moments. No. These moments are to be celebrated.
So join me as we jump in the Wayback Machine and turn back the hands of time once again to take a look at one of my favorite mecha shows of the 1980s, FANG of the Sun, Dougram. The story centers around the young Kryn Kashim, following his life as he struggles to outgrow his father's shadow. Equal parts young, naive, and idealistic, Kryn grapples with revelations about his father amidst an independence crisis on the Earth colony planet of Deloyer. We learn pretty early on that the situation back on Earth is pretty dire, with Earth being dependent on Deloyer for nearly half of the resources it needs to sustain the population. We also learn there's a strong rift between those from Earth and the residents of Deloyer, as 150 years of colonization has caused tensions between the two planets to chafe. The overarching plot is driven by the interactions between various factions on Deloyer, the Earth Federation's military presence, and the guerrilla forces fighting for the planet's independence. At the start of the series, Kryn is portrayed as a relatively ordinary young man caught up in the midst of war and occupation. His initial connection to the Earth Federation sets the stage for his later involvement with the guerrillas, as Kryn deserts from the Earth Federation army after being unable to cope with his father's actions as governor during the crisis. Convinced to join the growing independence movement of guerrilla fighters opposed to his father when he meets its leader, the charismatic Professor Samelin, Kryn's shift from being a member of the Earth Federation to aligning with the guerrillas marks a turning point in the series. His decision is influenced by various factors, including his evolving understanding of the conflict, the impact of the war on Deloyer's people, and the relationships he forms with the guerrilla fighters. As Kryn becomes more involved piloting the advanced combat armor Dougram for the rebels, he struggles with the complexities of war, loyalty, and morality as he faces incredibly challenging dilemmas and tough decisions. These moments of introspection and ethical considerations further shape his character and reflect the challenging nature of the situation. The series explores the personal and political consequences of rebellion, touching on themes such as the cost of freedom, the impact of war on individuals, and the ethical dilemmas faced by those caught in the crossfire. Blending political intrigue, military conflict, and character-driven drama to create a narrative that goes beyond typical mecha anime conventions, FANG of the Sun is notable for its mature themes, realistic portrayal of warfare, and intricate character relationships. In a 1983 interview, director Takahashi Ryusuke said, "In our lives, there is good and evil everywhere you look, but not everything functions perfectly on one side or the other. Rules and morals manifest because of that divide, but they're not perfect. They're made by humans after all. It's okay to not always follow those rules. You can question the difference between what's right and what's wrong.
When our main characters get wrapped up in a situation, they have to weigh what's important to them. First and foremost, they're still at war. If they sent a bomb over to the enemy, people would lose their lives. I put a lot of tough situations in Dougram that even I don't know how I'd go about solving them. Those were the times when Kryn struggled the most. I let him struggle because that's the kind of character he is. Instead of coming to a clear-cut decision, as long as he could convince himself by, say, 70%, then he could come to terms with leaving behind the other 30% of his feelings. By doing that, I think he slowly grows as a character. If he was able to make decisions without any hesitation, I think he'd die before ever becoming an adult. Now, I don't want to say too much more here, because I don't want to spoil the plot for you. However, there are a striking number of things about this show that share similarities with the Battletech universe we've all come to know and love, both visually and conceptually. Battletech fans will quickly notice a concept we're all familiar with: the laid-back, trash-talking mercenaries. With MECHS. One thing I really liked about Garcia's mercenaries in this show is how human they are in their capricious behavior, with their blatant disregard for any lives but their own. Garcia himself is a fine example of the phrase, "absolute power corrupts absolutely." As the story progresses, we learn more about the Earth Army's way of life and a militaristic society where combat armor pilots are seemingly revered above all becomes apparent. There's combat armor pilots, and then there's everyone else, which was definitely the overall idea in Battletech's early days. FANG of the Sun is a show that doesn't make its mecha combat the sole focus, and there's plenty of examples strewn throughout the series of the futility of unarmored infantry against mechs, the use of anti-mech maneuvers, and providing a true sense of scale. Tactics and real military doctrine are on full display as producers took the show seriously, wanting to make a real robot animated feature. Another thing eagle-eyed Battletech fans will notice is Kryn gives off strong Victor Steiner Davian vibes early on in the show. This is no more apparent than when being trained at a Nagelring-style facility in combat armor operations thanks to political favors from his well-connected father in government. You'll also see this manifest in Kryn's consistent need to prove he's capable of, quote-unquote, saving his father from a coup attempt, commandeering and even stealing Federation mechs, ready to take on all comers in his lone Soltic H8 round facer. Now, I'm not saying the developers copied these concepts to shape the Battletech lore, but fans of the setting can certainly see the similarities between the concepts of the show and the evergreen tentpoles of today's game. One thing we do know they borrowed, however: the mechs. Straight away in the show's intro, we're shown what Battletech fans would later come to know as the Shadowhawk. This is the Dougram combat armor, and would also be referred to as the symbol of Deloyer or the Fang of the Sun. Protected by thick plot armor, Dougram is a powerful machine, designed and built to withstand the operational rigors of the infamous X-Nebula surrounding Deloyer. It's interesting to note here that despite the intro depicting Dougram with the Shadowhawk's signature shoulder-mounted autocannon, this weapon was an added development for the machine that came later. Known as the Turbozak, or referred to as the linear gun, the addition made the already formidable Dougram combat armor into a true terror to behold on the battlefield. This rod would often knock out enemy units in one blow. But let's be fair here. The Dougram's regular weapon could do that too, if the plot necessitated it at the time. The linear gun was used more for ranged combat, and the regular weapon it carried seemed to be more suited for the purpose of dueling, with missiles to back it up if it needed. The shoulder-mounted missiles were a late-stage addition thanks to battlefield salvage, and the hodgepodge nature of outfitting a mech in the field is another conceptual commonality the show shares with Battletech, showing early hints at the possibilities of customization and making something unique out of a stock design. Both Dougram's regular gun and the Turbozak appear to be energy-based as opposed to relying on ammunition, however. And I mean, that makes sense for a hero mech. But no hero is a hero without. In the same first episode, we also get a teaser of the fights to come, showcasing Dougram versus the Soltic H8 round facer. These things are capable fighters, modern machines the Federation seems to have an endless amount of, despite how often they go on and on about resource management in the show. Battletech fans will know it as the early Griffin, but an honorable mention should be made here for the Bushman as well. It looks close enough to a classic Griffin to throw you off at first, but this harassment unit doesn't show up nearly as often as the Sultics. We don't have to wait long to be introduced to the next part of the old school cool either. Stepping into frame shortly after we witness the Sultics in action, we meet the Crab Gunner, which represents the classic Goliath from Battletech. A big difference here is that the Abitet F-44A Crab Gunner needs multiple crew members to operate, whereas a Goliath can operate on just one. It appears as though these are more the quote-unquote walking tank stereotype than biped mechs, as they function quite similarly. A gunner operates the turret while a driver handles navigation and terrain. Dougram knocks these things down like bowling pins. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this could be the impetus behind why Battletech leaned so heavily into quad mechs at the beginning as well. But when it's time to up the ante in the fight against Dougram, the Fetties bring in the Abitet T-10B Blockhead. Another fast strike unit, fans of the classic Wolverine will instantly recognize it. These machines tend to be a problem for the guerrillas if they don't have Dougram on hand, and as the series moves forward, they become about as commonly seen on the show as the Round Facer. FANG of the Sun Dougram was a heavy contributor to Battletech in its early days, providing 7 of the original unseen mechs. Our last few examples don't get seen in the series until the viewer's into the show's final act. I think I was over 2/3 of the way in before I first saw the hasty F4X Ironfoot and the Sultic HT-128 Bigfoot combat armors, the Thunderbolt and Battlemaster, respectively. Man, these 80s shades are rad! The Scorpion also makes an appearance at the 11th hour, manifesting itself as the Abitet F-35C Blizzard Gunner. So if you ever looked at the old Scorpion art and wondered what those 3 guns on the side are, they're smoke dispensers. It carries a linear gun as its main armament, and becomes one of the main combat armors the Federation uses as the series ramps up toward its conclusion. These 3 machines add a modicum of tension to the last leg of the story, and really make the series feel as close to seeing an animated story set within the Succession Wars as you're going to see. But the similarities to Battletech don't end there. In the same year that Battle Droids was released in America, Takara Games released The Battle of Stanrey, a tactical simulation game based on the show. Board Game Geek describes the Battle of Stanrey as a hex-based miniatures game that comes with 23 die-cast metal mech figures and a set of 20 three-dimensional plastic tree models to be used on a 6-piece modular board. If a tree is potentially in the line of sight, the player peers through a miniature periscope placed on the battlefield. If at least 50% of the enemy model is visible, then the unit may fire. Combat is resolved with a single 6-sided die roll that is cross-referenced on a hit chart that takes into account the statistics of both the offensive and defensive units. In 1985, a sequel was released, The Battle of Kalnock, which also allows players to create their own scenarios within the realm of FANG of the Sun. I love how the art on the back of the box depicts a kid playing the game dressed as young Kryn with a friend dressed as an enemy combat armor pilot. So wholesome. I mean, look at all these maps and the counters, the rules. If taking a look through Battle Droids is like taking a visit to Jurassic Park, then the Battle of Stanrey has to be like the primordial ooze from which it all spawned. Overall, FANG of the Sun Dougram is a great show and a seminal work where the evolution of Battletech is concerned. The 75-episode duration of the series allows for a nuanced exploration of Kryn's character, providing ample time for his development and the unfolding of his story within the broader context of the war on Deloyer. The richness of the character development is a key aspect that contributes to the enduring appeal of the show, but beyond the action and drama, FANG of the Sun excels at carrying important messages. The themes of love, loss, family, and even mental health really hit home for me on this show.
今度こそ自分が戦闘員に向いてないことをつくづく分かりました。笑ってください。
誰も笑いませんよ。自分の弱さをさらけ出す勇気は素晴らしいですよ。
ハックルさん。
そうよ。周りに流される連中の多い中でね。
ああ、戦闘は何も戦場だけとは限らねえんだしな。
黙せ。
ありがとう。チコさん、私にできることでこれからも戦っていきます。それではクリン君、皆さん頑張ってください。
気をつけてよ。
考えてみりゃ俺たちはダグラムに乗ってるクリン一人におんぶしてたってわけだな。
知らないうちにね。
違うよ、それは。自分で望んだことなんだ。 これでいいのさロッキー、これからも。
And before we go, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Battlebound, and hit that notification bell to stay updated on more anime retrospectives and discussions to come. I'll be looking back at several other examples of cartoons that shaped the modern Battletech landscape, so leave your favorite in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the world of FANG of the Sun, Dougram. If you've seen it, I'd love to hear from you in the comments, so tell me your thoughts and feelings, and don't forget to share this video with your fellow anime nerds. I'm Tuckdavian, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time right here, out on the Space Lanes.
Be sure to smash our like button and subscribe to our channel.
Crowdfunding is when lots of people give you small amounts of money to help your passion project come to life.